Good afternoon and welcome to the Joy Show here on Friday afternoon. We're planning to have a little bit of fun today. And the Joy Show is about the uniqueness of each individual. So we tell stories and share stories of incredible lives and their uniqueness, because joy is an acronym for just one you. I'm Barbara Jean and I'm the host, and I am so delighted to share with you our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation and peace, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. We thank the generations of people who have cared for this land for thousands of years, and we recognize our oneness, and we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality, a peaceful reality, an honoring, equitable reality. We are one. Miigwech. Thank you. Oh, so my guest today is a remarkable woman who has done it all. Believe me, she has done it all. Oh, you are in for a treat. Missy is an ordained religious science and interfaith minister. She is the curriculum director and a member of the faculty for Emerson Theological Institute. She serves on the board of directors for the Science Mind Archives and Library Foundation, and is also a member of the Sage Council for the Vistara School of Inner Wisdom Studies. Missy was a music minister for many faith groups and has joined Unity. Unity now. She's a Unity minister. She has a broad esoteric studies background, which covers New Thought, mysticism, shamanism, drumming, herbal and plant medicines, aromatherapy. Oh my goodness, we could just go on and on. The work she's doing now with sound healing and stuff is really, really precious and special and beautiful. So, welcome, the Reverend Dr. Missy.
Well, I was a music minister for Unity.
I know. As soon as I said that, I went, wait a minute, music minister for that. I got that wrong.
Oh, yeah. You know, when I was in music, it was like, it was sound as consciousness, and consciousness goes out on sound. So for me, before I became a credentialed minister, to me, you sent the divine force out on sound. And so my ministry was by sharing that consciousness through sound for different churches. So, you know, I was a music minister for Unity and United Church, and what was the Mary Baker one? A Christian Science. I was liturgical Lutheran. I did Catholic. I did Methodist. I did Presbyterian. I did a lot of funeral homes. So I sang Ave Maria, you name it, you know. And so it to me it was just the consciousness and the sound, and you get into the God space, and you send that peace and out on the sound, and you bring the presence and beingness to the space you're in, and you inform the space. And so to me, that's a ministry. So when people say, well, they're not a minister, you know, it's you minister because it's you bring you.
You bring you to the table. Well, I want to go back a little bit. You shared something just before we went live about some of the things you did when you were younger. And I'd like to start there with that list, because, you know, one of the things that I found funny about it is if I looked at that list in a group of people, I would look for men first. I wouldn't look for a woman. So tell me the story.
Well, there were 6 kids. You know, there were 4 women, two guys, and so we grew up on a farm, and so everybody shared in it. So we all learned to drive tractor, and there was and we all dug irrigation ditches. We all pruned vines. You know, we all fertilized. You know. Sat on the back of the trailers that attached to the tractors, and we put our hands into the fertilizer. It was like nitrogen stuff, and we'd spread it with our hands. We didn't know any better then, you know. And I know. And we go out and pick grapes and spread them for raisins and stuff. And we had a school near us, a Granville school. My dad went to it. It was first through eighth grade, and we had this wonderful track. This is before we became unified into the Sanger School District. And so we'd go down there, and Dad would like throw toss the baseballs to us, and that's how we learned to hit the balls and catch them. So we'd all be learning that, and we had a basketball hoop, and we'd play and learn. So we learned all these sports, and so when we went to school, we try out for the teams, and we were pretty well trained by that, because my dad had been on the Berkeley school, on the Berkeley track team for the West Coast Relay. So he was so we all became kind of jocks, at the time. And I lettered in volleyball and track. I ran the 110, 220, and the 440 relays, and I was a high jumper and a long jumper, and I substituted for the shot putter a couple times when the shot putter didn't show up, and because we all had to lift weights. I mean, it's nothing I could do now, but and so I lettered in basketball and track and softball and football, women's football, and so when we'd go to these places, and people would say, write down something, and you had these like bingo things where you had to go find people to put their names in and it would say, well, find the person that lettered in football, basketball, and softball and drove tractor. They would assume it was a guy. And
there would be that assumption that you'd look around the room for a man first.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
That's awesome. Now you went to college initially for you studied in voice training.
Right. I was planning on being an opera singer. So I got my bachelor's at Fresno State University in a voice performance, and I was going back and getting my master's in voice. And I had a kids group that was on TV, local dinner theater, and I was a local director. Plus, I did some other shows, things like Pippin and Sound of Music and nice. Things like that. And then I saw what people were doing. It was just so, I don't know, in music and in theater, it just, after a while, it just gets so dreary and how people act and I just, and knowing that my type of voice, which was a lyric coloratura, because I had like a 3-octave range, my voice at that time went down to an F below middle C and an F above high C. And it would take like into my 40s to, so I was going to end up having to spend another, at this time I was like 27, I was going to have to spend another 20 years just doing repertoire. And I thought to myself, how boring, because I had a lot of interest, and I didn't, and I thought, and what am I going to do as a job? I was teaching voice. I was starting to build a practice teaching my voice, teaching voice students, and but yet at the same time, I felt kind of a call. Now, what's interesting about when you start feeling a dissatisfaction with where you are, when you start feeling like you've lost the spark, and I had started here my whole life, I had thought I wanted to be a singer in opera and do this and that. And all of a sudden, it was like there was no spark. There was no push. And all I could see as I was looking at my life, projecting myself in the future was, did I want to do this for the next 20 years? Could I see myself teaching, let's say, day after day, voice students, or doing a grocery store here with a master's degree eventually? Or did I even want to do a master's degree? I loved history. I loved other things. and so I decided at that time that I needed to do something different. So I kind of looked at my options. What did I want to do? And I really
did something very different.
Yeah. So I had been involved in ROTC at the time, not ROTC. It was a society. It was called Angel Flight. It was kind of like a women's a sorority that supported the ROTC group on the Fresno State campus. And my first husband had been an ROTC graduate.
Okay.
And, yeah. So I decided that to join the service. So I decided to join the Air Force, but I decided instead of going and spending
music to Air Force, just such a natural evolution.
Yeah, and to see if I had gone through ROTC, I would have. That was a 2-year program there, and so I decided to go down and take what they call the ASVAB and to take the test and stuff, and so I took the test and I passed, of course, and that was in I was 27, and I went into the delayed enlistment program because I had to sing the Christmas program for the bishop. I was a soloist for the local one of the local Catholic churches, and they had asked me to sing, and there was the harpist was coming in,
Nice.
And so that was like December 16th. I was supposed to sing.
That's my birthday.
And 5:00 in the morning, December 17th, I was on the bus going to Lackland Air Force Base, and on my way to basic training. So, yeah.
Now, what are the things that you did when you were in the Air Force? Like, did you do anything with combat? Did you do anything out of the country? Like, what was?
Well, I started out, I went to the School of Administration. So I learned how to be an administrator. And so I spent 2 years so I went to the Air Force School of Administration after basic training, and learned how to set up offices, how to manage offices, how to manage files, how to write and regulations, how they should be formatted and everything, and how they should be, and how to set up files, and how, everything that an office should need, both at a staff level and orderly room, essentially a personnel level. And then I applied for officer training when it came open for non-technical. Non-technical meant, because I really didn't want to go pilot, and I didn't want to become an engineer, and I wasn't an engineer. And so I took the test, and I got accepted, and I got to choose what did I want to do. And I didn't want to be a missile layer. I didn't want to end up in a silo, underneath the ground. So I chose logistics and chose transportation. So I went into transportation, and so my first assignment as enlisted had been in South Carolina and at Shaw Air Force Base. And then I went for officer. I went to Fort Worth. That was my first assignment as head of vehicle maintenance. And and it was interesting because you get to learn how to go outside your comfort zone.
Time.
Because you're there, they're not used to having a female in charge of a group of men. And so they think that they can take advantage of your, like they can slough off that this person is going to just let things slide and stuff. And so I observed for 2 weeks. And then my master sergeant came to me and said, "What do you want? Do you want me to talk with a man?" I said, "No, it's time now." So I went in, and I grew up on the farm, and I said, "What the do you guys think you're doing?" And everybody's just, and I laid it on the line, and I said, "Supervisor's upstairs." And the thing is that I'd been theater trained, and so it's like, to me, it was like, okay, how am I going to do this? And because whenever you don't know what to do, then it's like, it's not that you become it, you play at it kind of, but there's ways to do it. So because I'm there kind of like looking at Missy doing this, and she's like this, because it was outside my comfort zone too.
Yeah.
Because I had been taught growing up, my mom wanted us to be independent, but yet we couldn't say no to her. So you never knew when you could say no. You never knew when you could say. Do you see what I'm saying?
That's confusing. Yes.
Life's confusing because you don't know how to set boundaries. And here I had to learn on the job training, OJT, how to be firm, but also how to remain true to the core of my integrity, because it's so very easy when you're new, because people want to be, you want to be promoted, you want to do a good job, but at the same time, you don't want to do favors for people. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because my whole thing was, people would come in and they would sit down and they would try to, that whole thing about they would try to cozy up because they wanted a favor from you. I said, don't ask me for favors. What do you want? If you need it, I'm here. We're here to serve you. We're here to help you. You don't have to play these silly
games.
I do not. To me, when you play games, you're being insincere. You're out of it. Tell me what you need. If I can help you, I will help you. That's what life is about. Community. We're here to help each other. It's not me being across the finish line before you. It's not competition. It's let's hold hands and go across together. It's a win-win. That's what we're here to do. And
that's the best.
Yeah. So to me, if I could help you, I'm helping the whole collective. So it's not, don't play games with me. Don't try to do this politicking stuff.
And I think they do it because you're a woman.
They do it because that's how they're used to. Also, they are taught that that's how they have to get along in life. They have to give a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, so that But to me, it's like
let's just be straight up and get it done.
Just be straight up. We because I'm looking at the whole. Let's say in this case, I'm looking at the whole base. Who needs what? How do we support the whole wing so that everybody is supported? Okay.
And that's important in every area of life. Like those are skills that I'm sure you're using in ministry as well.
When I have a student, I'm looking at their whole, they may want to go this way. Let's say their favorite, they like this, but I'm looking at their whole portfolio, let's say. And I'm there saying, you like this, but you might want to look at this because this comes into this and this will make you stronger over here. So I'm looking at the whole person. That will make someone stronger, and you'll find that this works into this, works into this, works into this, and it's like building a house on a stronger foundation.
Strong foundation.
Yeah, my dad always said that it's not important the grades you get, but but the whole person concept. Are you better for the whole? It's not whether you get an A or a B or a C, but what did you learn? And does it make you a better person? Are you more whole because of what you learned?
I love that. I think too, it's important to look at our skills and our talents and then to add to and broaden it. Now, how many years were you in the military?
I was in the military 24 years, 8 months, and then I spent about 10 years, 5 months as a civil servant. So then I was there a total of 35 years in government service, because when I went into civil service, I was the liaison to the Washington, D.C. area, and mostly the Joint Staff and the White House and FEMA and all these agencies on behalf of the commander of U.S. Transportation Command, who was a 4-star general. So I was the civilian, and then it was a civilian and a full-blood colonel, and we held down the office at the Pentagon. So when the general and his aide and he was a 4-star, so and all the other generals or anybody came in from Scott Air Force Base, that was the home base of the C-5s and the 141s and things for the airlift that took the troops, that took the cargo in support of the mission. So when he would come up to have to brief the Secretary of Defense, or he would have to come up and see the Joint Staff, or he was called over to go see the president, then this was his office. So we had computers there that were hooked up to Scott Air Force Base, and we had an office there for him. And so I was responsible for and along with the colonel, we were responsible for holding down the fort, so to speak, making sure the computers were and also for coordinating with anybody that wanted anything from Transcom. So we were there as a liaison
for the different things. That's cool. Now, when you were there, when you decided to leave there, what years were you there? Like, I went into Washington, D.C. I went to the Pentagon. I had gotten a fellowship to work at the Office of Secretary of Defense, Assistant Undersecretary of Defense for Transportation Policy, and I went there in May of 2001, just before 9/11, and then so you were in the Pentagon for 9/11.
I was off campus. My husband, though, was in my soon-to-be husband was in the Pentagon. So he evacuated. I was in an office building in what they called Crystal City. So I was like a quarter of a mile away.
Okay.
So, okay.
What was that experience like?
Well, we were looking out the window. We had and saw the smoke, and we thought maybe a helicopter had crashed on the helipad, and but it hadn't, and so what we had to do was we had to go in and start collating all the news as it came in. But I was supposed to be at the Pentagon that morning. But what was interesting is that I got terribly tired, and asked, I was supposed to be there at 9:30, and I asked if I could go in later, and so I was given permission to go in later. And of course, it was like at 9:27 that it was hit. So it was interesting how when you're not supposed to be at a certain time that you're not. But
that's that feeling, right? Like, our bodies talk to us in really interesting ways. And I think sometimes we're in a space where all of a sudden we're totally exhausted. So it prevents us from doing something or causes us to leave something.
Yeah.
And then we feel fine later.
Well, and that's why it's so important to listen to yourself,
Absolutely.
And we were told to evacuate at 11 o'clock, and then we're crossing the city, hundreds of people crossing the bridge, and the underground was down because they were afraid of sabotage.
Okay.
And but it was interesting. Everybody was helping everybody else across the bridge. There was the Anton book, the second book. I wrote about it about that day. It's called Another Word for Grief, or something like that. But it was about that day, how it starts out like any other, and you're racing through, and you're doing this and this and this, and then 911 happens.
There's this life change that occurs.
Yeah, because you're there and you're in, and then a couple days later, I woke up and I just cried and cried and cried. And I called my boss. I said, I can't come in. I'm just crying. I just cried. I cried all day until I just couldn't cry anymore. And then because you're there with all the images of everything.
Yeah, it was really horrific.
Yeah. And then I went back to work,
Well, that's the thing, right? Like these things happen that are so big and shocking, and then life goes on.
And life goes on. Yeah. And the thing is that it's to allow yourself to grieve. What happens in the military a lot of times is you have to compartmentalize it in the moment because you have people depending on you.
Oh, of course.
So as you're going across the bridge, I felt like and it's on, and you never know whether you're really compartmentalizing it or whether you're in the witness position, because you're looking at you're looking at, do people need help? Do you need some water? Do you need help here? Do you need a place to stay? That was all that happening, as hundreds were streaming across the bridge trying to find a way home. Yeah. And it's interesting how people come together during those times, but
and then we don't in other times.
But how we compartmentalize it, but how important it is that to allow yourself to grieve, that it is not a bad mark to allow yourself to grieve, because you're grieving for you're not only grieving for lives lost, but you're grieving for lost potential. You're grieving for the choices made and the choices not made. Yeah. And
you're grieving the loss of a sense of safety or security that you believed you had. And now all of a sudden it's been shook.
And now it's been shook. And now you're on a different timeline.
So it changes everything, because our mind changes in that moment. And then from there, we're creating something new. We're going to go to a commercial break, and we're going to be right back, because this is really cool, interesting stuff. So you're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network. And my wonderful guest, the Reverend Dr. Missy Higginbotham.
I know.
I have to think about that. And we'll be back in just a minute. So don't go away. And if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat. All right. We'll be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Home Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And we're back. You're watching The Joy Show, where the joy is an acronym for just one U, and my guests like to share their stories. I love to hear them. And Missy, your story is like none I've ever talked to anybody about. So it's like, you know, musician becomes a member of the Air Force in service, and then and then moving on to ministry. So you have had this really remarkable life. But when I think of the military, and then I think of ministry, military feels kind of rigid and just an outsider's perception, right? Like
there are key words, people go into the military, I don't think necessarily because they're gonna, kill someone. I think they're looking for, especially in the logistics area, because they hear the words community, they hear the words brotherhood, they hear the words be all you can be, excellence in all you do, the call, service, so they hear these. There's a lot of encoded words. And I think sometimes the PTSD comes when you're taught that thou shalt not kill, and all of a sudden you have to. And so you have to then to break apart your psyche in order to yeah.
So no wonder people come back a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to reconcile. That's one of the things I've often thought of, is that how, because it is in our nature to love. Mm-hmm. And it's not in our nature, like overall. I mean, there's some people that, they like to kill, but the majority of people wouldn't even consider killing somebody unless they were in a really horrible situation. So to all of a sudden be told, okay, now you're going to go and bomb this place, or you're going to, attack.
When I was in Charleston, we were in the air traffic control area. We were doing, it was Charleston is where you deploy a lot of the donations for overseas. Okay.
Yep.
That and Dover. But so here you had, let's say when during the war in Kosovo, when all that was happening, or in Bosnia, and then later on in some of your other areas where they needed food, they needed clothes, and so they were funneling in all these donations, and so I'm in the I forget what the duty officer, I forget what the tower is called now for the airlifters, but I was up in the tower, and my guys are there saying, this is what we've been trained for. For them, it was trained for. For them, it was like a spiritual experience. They were willing to work 12-hour shifts to get the job done because they were helping people. You see, to them, it was like, this is what we've been trained for. Let's get those clothes. Let's get that food to the people. You see, there was no thought in their mind about war. It was about, can we get the people stuff that so they can survive.
They need so they can survive. That's very cool. That's very cool. And it's interesting how you said this is what we trained for.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks volumes.
Right. For them, it wasn't so much trained to go to war, even though there's always that specter in the background.
Yeah.
But it was this is what they trained was to airlift and to help, because that was one of the biggest missions of Air Mobility Command was to airlift food and airlift this humanitarian mission.
Humanitarian stuff, which would be a better part
yeah.
than the other.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're in the military, basically 35 years. 34 years. You had it down to months and days. That was amazing.
35 years.
I have trouble thinking of how many. I mean, I know I've been in ministry 25 years, but I couldn't tell you the months and all that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you is that transition. When you transitioned, what was that like? Because that's like a whole mind twist.
Well, they were going to send me to Korea, which they always do. They always do that for lieutenant colonels. And they finally have a lot of lieutenant colonels. They always send them on give you assignments for a short tour, what they call, and it's always unaccompanied. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, he didn't want me to go. And I said, well, if I don't, I said, you don't want me to go, but we're not married. Yeah. He says, I said, so do you want to get married or do you want me to go? And he says, well,
there's a proposal for you.
No, he says, well, I don't want you to go. I said, because if I don't go, I have to put in, they only give you a 7-day option. So I'm out of a job. If I don't go, I'm out of a job in 7 days. Yeah. Essentially, I really have a 3-month thing, but I have to tell them within 7 days that I'm not
going to do it.
Yeah.
And so that must have been a bit stressful too at the time, just trying to.
Well, I had gone, because I also had gone hypothyroid, and so I was having a bunch of medical issues. And I knew also if I had gone, I probably would have died at my desk. I was having, my body was so out of balance from all the stress of that, from working on the National Military Command Center and 12-hour shifts. And so, because I was handling all the donations and stuff going into Iraq and stuff. So it was, it was an interesting time. And so he said, well, okay, we'll
get married.
and
how many years have you been married?
We've been married 20 years now.
Okay, so it was a good decision.
It was a good decision. That's right. He says that's what I'll tell him. It's my story, stick it to him. But yeah, it was a good decision.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you left that job, you got married, obviously. And so what got you to really get into the ministerial stuff? Like what was the deal?
Actually it was several years. Well, I had been ordained and metaphysical minister back in 1992, and I was when I was a captain, and so I was like having a double life, you know.
That's hilarious.
So my off times,
and I'm studying.
So my off times, I was leading drumming circles and building medicine wheels and stuff. And then, in fact, when I go to, they forget that I was in the military at United Church.
Then
I go in my uniform. They go, huh? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was kind of fun. I mean, I was learning about pyramids and learning how the Tao's and reading everything I could, because it was just like they had like 5 metaphysical bookstores, and I was just like,
I can relate.
Yeah, I was thirsty. I was drinking from the well. You know, I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid. I was just drinking at the well. I started my. I actually had gone to a workshop, and the guy was talking about ascension, and I said, what? You know, and it kind of keyed. It was like a key word that started me going, because I went into a bookstore then, and a book about ascended mastery dropped in front of me.
I've had that experience.
Yeah. And then I started working on I am. And
Yeah.
I started working on I am and the violet flame. And then I started because one thing for me is that if it's going to work, I'm going to prove it to myself. And so I proved
Always.
what would work to myself and what didn't work. And I found that I could feel it in my energy field. And I took Reiki training and I took and then I started working finding that with sound that I started teaching myself sound healing, because I could find things happening in my energy field with the sound stuff, and I started doing invocational healing, and people were willing to be my willing victims, and they were giving me feedback, and then I started working with. And see, that was the beginning of the sound healing movement with Stephen Halpern and Beaulieu and Jonathan Goldman. I mean, that was just at the beginning of everything. And I got a set of tuning forks, started working with tuning forks, and I had a whole set of crystal bowls. This guy decided to sell me 7 crystal bowls, including this 32 or 36-inch one, which you can't even get anymore. And for $300, he sent me the whole.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no. And last year I gave them away to a friend of mine and gave them all away to her, because I'm now using a crystal harp, and I'm using Himalayan bowls now, Nepalese bowls, so it was just a really fun time of experimentation and seeing what worked, what didn't, and meanwhile, I was building the inner temple. For some reason, I got this concept of the inner temple, started doing the meditation, focus on the inside, and I started getting teachings, and I started writing them down, teachings on integrity, teachings on purity of self, teachings on authenticity, teachings on the sword of truth. So it's interesting seeing all these things coming out on YouTube now, and I'm there saying, "Oh yeah." I go back, because it's like having a timeline from the late '80s and the early '90s for me, and it's like it's all pulled forward, because I say everything comes around at a different level, the spiral.
It truly does.
So that was happening at the same time that I'm in the military, and so what I'm doing though is at the same time as saying your spiritual life cannot be separate from your daily life. So I was trying to bring what I was learning and becoming into operation as a military person.
Right.
How can you be a person of integrity? How can you, and so every time I got a promotion, I would sit with myself and say, yes, I can retire at this rank. That way, no matter what people asked me to do, I couldn't be balked. There was always that straight up, because I had someone tell me one time that as you went along the spiritual path, the path got narrower, and what that is that you have to let go of all the fakeness. You have to let go of all the stuff, of all the mask, of everything. It keeps you from being true. Keeps you from, it's like a house, a truing. Everything has to be in alignment. You have to be in accord with who you are as a God self. And that radiates out. You have to be what they used to call true blue, and that way someone could not, I did not want to be corruptible. I didn't, and it was okay. And sometimes when I would hear people, there were several times I would hear people say, and I would raise my hand. I mean, when I was in school as enlisted, I can remember taking notes because I was in this one school and these things were happening that was against the law, and the inspector general and everybody was complaining, and I was taking notes. And then the Inspector General brings us all, and he asked people, "Have you noticed anything?" And no one would say anything. And I'm there going, and I was there physically shaking. And I told him what I saw. He says, "Can you write this down?" And I said, "Here, it's in triplicate." And meanwhile, I had sent a copy to my mom and dad. I sent a copy to my husband, just in case I disappeared. I mean, it was that because there had been people that had disappeared. There had been people women that had been raped. And so there's times when you have to, it's like, if you don't say something, then something happens. And it ended up 3 months later, people were put in jail for fraud. The general there was for running a prostitution ring. Yeah. So it was, and then later on, I mean, there were things like, that I would stand up and say something, and I was like this, and I had to be okay with not getting promoted. I had to be okay with that, right where I am right now, that, it's like the curry where someone would come in and they'd smile at you and you say, "No, I can't do that. This is against the law." And they'd walk out and then they'd, and they tell everybody how awful. I was that bitch in transportation. Yeah. But the thing is that I would not allow my people to be forced to break the law. How demoralizing they were demoralized because people had forced them to break the law, to break statute, and not just not local law, but congressional statute, public law, number such and such, that's codified by the Congress, congressional law. And so, and I had to be okay, so I was kind of like the outlier, and there were people that knew me, that liked me. That was okay. But I wasn't someone's favorite person up there, up in Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, but that was okay. Because I had to
be okay with it when you're in leadership.
Fair and just. Yeah. You have to show that leadership, a type of leadership.
And if it's interesting, like there has to be, like you have to be the pillar. Mm-hmm. And although, you might be like a tree that bends a little, like goes with the wind, goes with the flow of things. But at the same time, there's that strength, there's that groundedness, there's that connection that says, this is what's happening. And you have to stand in that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, as a woman directing men, especially men in the military who are, like, look at me, aren't I great? I'm thinking of them as that macho type. I know that's not true of all men, but
it isn't true of all men. I had some great men,
Oh, exactly. But it's fascinating to hear the stories and to sort of take in that journey, which was really, from farm girl to you ended as a colonel. That was your last
lieutenant colonel.
Mm-hmm. So farm girl, winning all those things in sports because she's like the jock.
She's a jock.
And then she's the opera singer. So that's natural. Most jocks are opera singers. Mm-hmm. And she goes into the military and she's at the Pentagon during 9/11, although she wasn't in the building at the time. And like, what a life. Mm-hmm. That life got you here.
Yeah. Because while I was in before I retired from the civilian job, that's when I found Emerson. And so I was doing my ministerial for religious science and interfaith at that time, because at the same time I had told my sister, Dr. Sandy, I said I had decided not to ever get a doctorate unless it was in consciousness.
I
and
love
so,
that.
yeah, and so I decided when she called me up one day, she says, "Guess what?" guess, and so I got my doctorate at the time in spiritual studies,
Yeah. And that was through Emerson?
that was through Emerson. Yeah, I had earlier gotten a Doctor of Divinity back in 1992, but no, 1997, I guess it was.
Yeah.
Somewhere back, I'll get there.
Somewhere back there.
And then I ended up getting a Doctor in Religious Studies several years later from Emerson. But I just love to learn, and yeah, it's to me there's just such a, for me, a bookstore is like a candy shop. Ooh, look at that! Look what they have.
I'm terrible in bookstores, and then I'll go to the library. And when I go to the library, it's like a little kid been let loose in a candy store. And I'll walk out. I can keep the books for 3 weeks. I'll walk out with like 15. There's no way I can read them in 3 weeks. I got to work sometime. I go to sleep sometime. But it's like I just can't say no to, even though I know I can come back I could read this book for 4 days. I could go back and get another one. No. I want to just, there's this energy that moves me. Yeah. But books are the best. Books are absolutely the best. So when we, have that, the other little, I'll call it an addiction I have. So books is one. The other is paper and pens.
Yeah.
This is my, you probably can't see it very well. This is my pen.
That's great. Yes.
Every color imaginable, it's like, you never know when you're going to need a green pen.
Yes, absolutely.
It's important. So anyway, but if I go into a stationery store, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to spend $100 on pens.
Yeah.
And I'm not buying the fancy ones, I'm buying the throwaway ones. So I think that journey of, all the ways in which we respond to life come through, even though our journey looks like it's a bit disjointed, like how did that work? It isn't. It's actually perfect. It's the perfect flow that brought you to now. And
well, I kept having dreams about, when I was a first lieutenant, I knew I had a dream that I was going to be on the Joint Staff. It was, I would have these different dreams. I had a dream that there was going to be broken squadron at Minot, and I was going to end up being a squadron commander up there, And so it was interesting how, that's what it ended up.
So that consciousness within you has always been tied to these areas of service. This ministry is service. Yeah.
And there was always and inside there was always seemed to be a call somewhere, a lean towards the God life, I guess you could say.
My call came when I was 27. In an epiphany moment. It was just, very clear moment.
Well, see, that's when I went into the military, and I graduated from basic training the day I was 28.
Wow. It's interesting that when you look at certain things, I started ministry on my 42nd birthday. That was my first night where I did my first service as a minister. And that was, it was really, the church that had hired me, when they chose me, they had chosen from 3 different candidates. And when they chose me, they phoned me up and they said, "Happy first day, happy birthday." They created a little song that they sang to me about happy birthday, happy first day. And I did a candlelight service on December 16th. And that was my first service. So we're down to our last 5 minutes because things fly here. And I'd like to know, what is one thing that you'd like to share as we end the show, like something that's really meaningful or something that really speaks to you?
Can I read the story of 9/11? Okay. It's called Grief Takes Many Forms. Up at 4 o'clock in the morning, on the road by 5, and I make the metro by 5:30. I arrive at Crystal City, Virginia by 6:25. I walk through the underground, picking up coffee on the way to my office. Racing across the street, I would go through the double doors, into the elevator, and up 3 flights to arrive promptly at my desk by 7 o'clock. To start my morning as an Air Force Transportation Fellow in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Transportation Policy. Our regular office at the Pentagon was getting a makeover. The asbestos in the walls was being torn out and the walls strengthened in that wing of the Pentagon. For now, we had to shuttle back and forth between Crystal City and the Pentagon for meetings and mail. Every day upon arrival, I put together a morning report of relevant news for my boss. So I started this day, like any other, 11 September 2001. This morning, I was supposed to do the daily mail run to the Pentagon at 9 o'clock. However, when I started getting ready, I was overcome by a tremendous sense of tiredness. So I asked if I could postpone it until 11. Permission was granted. Soon after the phone started ringing, our attention was directed to the television, and we saw the Twin Towers had been hit. I wonder if there was a crash on the helipad, I said. The world changed at precisely 9:37:46 a.m. Again, the phone started ringing. I tried to call my dad to let him know I was okay, but the lines were jammed. I sent an email, which he didn't receive until later that afternoon. Then I started collating the news reports for my boss as the reports came in. At around 11 o'clock that morning, we were told to evacuate. The inner city metro lines were all shut down for fear of sabotage. So there were literally masses of people on foot streaming across the bridges over the river, trying to find a way home. I lived in Maryland and worked in Virginia. My main thought was to head outside the city to find a metro station that was still operable, one that the officials would not deem open to sabotage, therefore they would not have closed it down. Then I could just ride the metro to connecting stations, crisscrossing lines if I had to, until I got home. While I started out at 11, I didn't arrive home until Maryland until around 4:30 that afternoon. It's interesting when a traumatic event happens to me how my brain, emotions, and body operate. I did not feel fear. I felt safe. I felt cocooned in a kind of numbness. I think that when you are in an organization responsible for other people, you settle into a kind of watchful alertness, aware of what is happening around you, not so much for yourself, but for others. That's how I was responding in the moment. At the same time, some would say I was in shock. Yes, I probably was in a certain level of shock. However, during this time, I was also stating the truth within. I was safe. I knew without any doubt that I still had things to do here and that this wasn't my last day on earth. So I centered myself within my heart space and just kept remembering the truth. I am always divinely protected. This hypervigilance continued for days as I went to the office and continued to constantly troll the news for updates from my boss. 7 days passed. Then I woke and could barely move. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and started crying and crying and crying. I called my boss and said, I don't think I could come in. I can't stop crying. I was told to stay home for a few days and to come back to work when I could. Thank you, I replied. Hanging up the phone, I collapsed back.
Stop. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we're at the end of our time.
Oh, I just had half a page to go.
Oh, it's such a great story. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and please do finish that story with me later. And for those of you who've been watching, thank you so much. Like, share, and subscribe. You're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network with my guest, the Reverend Dr. Missy Higginbotham, and we are so grateful that you joined. See you next time. Bye for now.